We good?
We are. We're live.
We're live.
Look at that.
We're live.
Sorry, there's a bit of like a pause, so it takes a second.
All right, so we're good on the screen. Everybody can
Yeah,
see
we're
us. We're good.
Yep.
All right.
What's going on, guys? What's up?
Yeah, what's going on, everybody? How's it going? Where's our chat box? I can't see it.
Oh, happy Wednesday. Oh.
Happy watch.
there we are.
Happy watch podcast Wednesdays. Thanks for coming to Beast Mode Land. We are here tonight with author A.R. Wise. He is the author of the Deadlock series. He is the author of the 314 trilogy, and he's also just finished a book called The Shutter In. Shutter In. A.R., viewers, introduce each other.
Everybody. Happy to be here.
Yes, yeah, we're very happy.
Very happy to have you
here. Just letting the chat fill up a little bit. They're gonna all say hi. We have Stephanie, we have Donna, we have Jeannie, and hi, hey y'all.
Yep.
We're from New York.
Okay.
He can say hi y'all or howdy y'all because he's in that Midwestern, Colorado area. So it's okay. They say y'all out there, believe me.
Out here, well, I'm in Colorado now. Not too much y'all is going on. We get a good amount of Texas, but I did live in Texas for a good long time.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, my sister's still there, so I've got a little y'all in me, no doubt about it.
I mean, I used to go to Boulder a lot, and I always for some reason, I don't know, Boulder, maybe that's more country? I don't know. I didn't tour around Colorado too much.
Maybe you just went to a really sketchy part of Colorado.
That's where my grandmother lived, thanks.
I didn't say your grandmother was sketchy. I said the area was sketchy.
Once again, it's where my grandmother lived, thanks.
Salty.
So, did Lucy make it here yet?
I haven't seen her yet.
Okay.
I haven't seen her pop
Lucy's
up yet.
our troublemaker, so that's why we were trying to avoid all that.
Watch out for her.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I'm going to do a little show and tell right now,
All right.
just so everybody knows how real I am here and how much I'm into this author and his books. Let me see if I can put it over here. A long time ago, when Deadlock came out, I won this on one of his online contests. It's a signed, autographed book cover from his first book. It's number 28 out of 50 ever done, and I'm the proud owner of number 28. So that's
awesome. Right. That was a long time ago too. That you've been a fan for a good long time. It was 2011 when I first released the very first Deadlock, and it didn't really get popular until 2012. So I think I was probably printing those maybe 2013.
Yeah.
So you've been holding on to that for a while.
And it's in look, it's in the actual envelope he sent it to me in. Move your big head. It's in the actual envelope he sent it to me in. Everything, 100% legit. I'm waiting until I have my man cave one day, and I'm going to make sure it's framed and put up nicely. But it's perfect condition.
That's great. I'm impressed.
Well, I try. I actually got introduced to you through a friend of mine. His name is Ryan, and Ryan has won actually some stuff from you too. He actually posted the other day because he found out that I was doing the interview with you, and he posted the other day on his Facebook, and he's like, I came home today after a bad day at work and found this on my doorstep, and it was another one of your book covers that he had won on one of your contests. He's like, this made everything better. And I was like, that's awesome, so pretty cool. Thank you for doing that for all us, fans out here.
It's amazing to me. It's funny because I get a lot of people saying, it's incredible how you interact with people, with fans, and that you'll send stuff out. Man, to me, it's incredible that anybody gives a crap. That's honestly, it's like I sit here and I do this. I write something, pour my heart out in it, and I feel incredibly privileged that anybody cares.
Yeah.
That anybody out there would take time out of their day to care about me is blows my mind to this day. So I'm incredibly blessed when it comes to that. To have anybody out there like you who's keeping something like that I signed and sent out to you and keeping it for years with the plan of hanging it up on your wall. That just swells my heart. It's like, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Like getting to connect with people that way. That's incredible.
Absolutely.
That's exactly, I think any artist out there That's the goal.
Right.
Is to be able to, whether you're painting, whether you're making music, you're writing, whatever you're doing, if you're able to take your inspiration and your art, give it to somebody else, and it affects them somehow,
Mm-hmm.
what more could you ask for? That's
Yeah.
it. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So it's great.
No.
I love it.
Chris and I definitely we pride ourselves on our collection of stuff that we have.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a friend of ours, Oscar. He did a Negan print for us that he autographed. We each have a print. You know, he's got your autograph. We another friend of ours, Stevie, who is an author. She is signing her trilogy that I bought off Amazon for me, and she's autographing it and signing it and sending it back to us. And we have a bunch of stuff that we pride ourselves on having. You know,
Yeah,
we love having this stuff. You know what I mean? It's such a cool interaction with authors, actors, actresses. You know, just different people, artists that are in this universe. You know, I'll say that, and it's just such a cool interaction. I love it. I really do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why, you know, at the end of the show, you'll find out we're going to end up mailing you some of our stuff, so that way you can have some of our stuff.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can see in the background is the Beast Mode shirt hanging up underneath the TV, but
And I'm also wearing.
yes, he's also wearing one
Nice.
too. So yeah, let's talk. Let's get into some of your work here.
Okay.
We'll wait for everybody to start asking some questions. We'll start getting everything rolling. Let's start with the basics, all right? When did you decide that you were going to sit down and be an author?
Well, I wanted to write my whole life. Ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to start writing. Not the way it ended up turning out for me. I got into business and did fairly well. Got out in the business world and was doing that gig and working my butt off for it. And eventually I was moving my family around the country. My mother still lived back in Indiana. And we got word that my mom came down with cancer. And she actually would always, every time I talked to her, it didn't matter how great I was going with the business I was doing, whatever, I would talk to her and she would always throw these things in asking me, how's the writing going? How's it going? That sort of stuff. And she knew I was busy, but the reason she was asking was because she knew that's what I always wanted to be. I always wanted to be a writer.
Right.
So it came around to where I found out that she had cancer. And at the time, I didn't have a lot of extra cash. So the idea of driving from here in Colorado to go back to Indiana, back and forth over and over again, it was tough. Financially, that just was a tough thing to do. So I had been reading all over the place about various different blogs about writing and about ebooks. This was back in 2011. And the ebook thing had just started at that point, you know. And I remember there was a girl out of, I think it was Wisconsin or Minnesota, named Amanda Hocking, who wrote a book and it went bonkers. And quite frankly, if I'm being totally honest, I read the book. I didn't think it was all that great. You know? It was one of those things where it's like, wow, you know, this is crazy. She just signed $1 million contract on this book, and and she wrote it in 6 weeks, and you know, and she didn't even think it was that good, and I didn't even think it was all that great, you know, to make $1 million off of.
Right.
So my thought was, geez, oh Pete's, what am I doing? Why wouldn't I give this a shot? And somehow or another, in conversations with a friend, we got into the zombie apocalypse thing, because this was back when, at that time, the zombie thing, of course, it was huge, but it was nowhere close to what it was about to become.
Right.
It had just really started. So I decided I want to try to write my version of the zombie apocalypse. And I want to do it. I want to try a different method. And I don't want to give away the ending of the first one. But if you read the first one, you know how it ends. That's what I knew right off the bat. It was like, I want it to end this way. And it'd be a little bit of a trick to where the audience, the reader's like, oh, I didn't see that one coming.
Right. Now,
and
did you have, we have a question. Did you have an inspiration? Like, was there someone who, like, you know, inspired you to either in that genre or just writing in general?
No. Really, it came down to I am not going to let my mom die.
Right.
And have never written anything, never given it a shot. That's really what it came down to.
And I remember, I don't mean to cut you off, I remember one of your books, it might have been after the very first one, in your editor's notes and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You wrote something about your mom, I believe. Like you did a tribute to her, I believe, in like your editor's notes section or whatever.
Right.
And that was even the fact that you do small things like that after every book. Your editor's notes are like, hey, sorry to leave you on a cliffhanger, but this is why, blah, 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 blah. That alone shows, the thought that you have, or, and put into these books, which as a fan makes me dive harder.
I've had both sections of this, as far as I have quite a few bad reviews and have gotten a lot of bad feedback where they're like, just shut up. We don't care about that sort of stuff. And there was a time actually where I stopped doing them.
I noticed.
For a couple of books, where it was like, I'm just sick of getting the feedback that I'm being pretentious or that nobody cares about this stuff. So I just forget it. I'm not going to do it. And it sucked, because that was one of the things that I love about it is, like I told you guys, I have this fan base and I like to interact with them. I want to keep that line of communication open. I care about you guys, and I like the fact that you care about me, you know, and that you want to hear about what it was that inspired this, or what was I thinking going through this section of the book. And I do totally agree with the viewpoint that art is subjective, and that it's up to the reader's interpretation of whatever you've written. And if you're coming in afterwards and saying, well, you should have thought of it this way, well, that's not up to you, the writer. That's up to the reader. And I get that. And I try not to do too much of that stuff in the books. Or at least I do anymore. I think during the Deadlock books, I did a little bit more of that, as far as this is what I meant by this, and you should have thought this. And I don't do as much of that anymore, but I still love the author's notes, because it gives me a chance to connect with people.
Exactly. And I mean, listen, if you got negative feedback on that, I want to apologize for other people, because for me, I loved it.
Here's the thing, and I'll say this to anybody out there who's thinking about writing: it's impossible. It's impossible to do this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Ignore it. You have to ignore the 1 stars, the whatever. It's very early on. My favorite 1-star review I ever got in my entire life was for 314. And it was because at the end of the book, the person said, this is a ripoff. This is not a full story. You have to read further on into the series. It's a trilogy. Now, it says it's a trilogy on the book. You know what I mean? It's like, it's trilogy. And so I think I responded to her something of, I apologize for the way you feel. It does say that it's trilogy. And her thing was, well, any good trilogy out there completes, every book is a complete book. And it's like, wait a second. And then she went on to say, like Lord of the Rings. What are you talking about? Lord of the Rings is exactly the example I would use, because it was one long book that the editor chopped into 3. You know? Like, it's not a full story. What are you talking about? That was my favorite. But as far as whenever I get a bad review, or anybody out there who's concerned about bad reviews, here's what you do. When you get one, think of your favorite book, one that is one of the greatest books you've ever read. For me, it's To Kill a Mockingbird, or Of Mice and Men.
I love To Kill a Mockingbird.
And I'll go jump on Amazon, and I'll go check out their bad reviews, because of course they've got hundreds and hundreds of bad reviews for these books that are incredible, that are
they're timeless. Right.
And there's some idiot out there that goes, To Kill a Mockingbird, it has nothing to do with killing a mockingbird.
I guarantee someone wrote that. I guarantee someone wrote that somewhere.
And Chris will always make fun of me for this, but I do try to write in my spare time. I have for a while, and it's one of those things that I psych myself out. You know what I mean? And I recently restarted my entire story that I was writing using the same concept, but I've kind of given the characters new backstories because I didn't like how it went.
I'll tell you this, man, and this is the best advice I can possibly give you. 2 pieces of advice, all right? Number 1, finish it. Always, always finish it, because I used to do the exact same thing. I would write 60,000 words of a book, and then realize, no, man, I don't like the way this is going. I need to start it over. If I start it over, I can change this, that, or the other thing. And I would do it over and over again, man. Before I actually published anything, I'd probably written a good 2 million words, throughout my life, that I just never published, because I never would finish it. I'd always restart. And what I found is that if I force myself to finish it, most of the time I'll go ahead and fix the problems by the end of the book. And if I don't, by the time I get to the end of the book, I realize that there are different problems I never even figured out halfway through it. So I might end up scrapping that book, but finishing it is incredibly important. always force yourself to finish that book. And then the second piece of advice is stop waiting. Stop it. Do it. Get it done and publish it. You never know what's going to happen. The way that Deadlock went for me, I'll never forget standing in my house talking to my wife about how incredible it would be if I made an extra $100 a month off of my books.
Yeah.
You know, it was in like November of 2011, and I'm like, I'm about to publish this book, and just thinking to myself, how crazy would that be if we made an extra $100? And then before that same time, the next year, I was considering quitting up my job and doing it full time. Yeah, that's how quickly it happened, and you never know what's going to hit and what's not. So give it a go.
Give it a go, man.
Yeah.
Just like him and I have to sit down and give it a go.
When him and I are not working, you know, the hours of three full-time jobs, you know.
Yeah. So let's get back to, all right, so you wanted to get a book published before your mother passed. So
yeah, and we didn't know at the time what was going to end up happening. We just knew she had breast cancer, so it scared me into that. Like, holy crap, this could happen, and I never wrote anything. Right. And so I went ahead and put out that first. The Deadlock one is a novella. It's not that long. I don't even think it's 20,000 words. Yeah. And so I decided to go ahead and get that done, send it out with no expectation of it doing very much. And it did well enough, and I got enough good feedback that it was like, I'm going to continue. I'm going to keep moving forward. And the next story is told from the main character's wife's point of view after the events of the first one. And my idea was I wanted to tell a story where every book was a different person's point of view, but it didn't tell the same story. You know, it wasn't like a different point of view from a different area of the city or something. Mm-hmm. It did continue the same storyline. Right. And I did that for the first 3 books. And then the 4th book was not done through one person's point of view. It was done as third person, omnipotent, I think. And then so that it was done third person so that it took all of their stories and told how it ended. Right. And so that was throughout the first series. That's what I was doing. And at the time I was experimenting with a couple other books, trying to get some stuff out as well. I did a vampire series that I threw out there that is, you could still find it. It's, but I ended up killing it. But it's in a compilation series I have called Sex, Drugs, and Dead Things.
Yes. I remember.
Yeah, so,
I remember you were. Yes. Now I do remember. Yeah, the cover of that was a female, kind of like all punked out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that cover. Yeah.
So and that was great. But I at the time, you know, Deadlock was my bread and butter for sure. And then I decided to do the 314 series, and I don't remember where it was that I wrote that. It might have been between Deadlock 3 and 4, or in between 4 and 5, somewhere in there. That 314 came out, and that one, by far, everything I've ever done, there's nothing has ever come close to the sales that 314 had. It went bonkers. Wow. That one really took off.
That's crazy. See, because I mean, I think you're right, because I read 1 through 4 on the Deadlock series, and then there was a little bit of a drop between 5 coming out and everything like that. And I think that's when you did, because I did read 314 in like that kind of lull time there as I was waiting for the next Deadlock to come out.
Yeah. It was in there somewhere that the 314 series started up.
Yeah, definitely was. And then you still, the Deadlock series you can get on Amazon. You can get it, you can get books 1 through 4 in one shot still, right? Yeah.
Which is, if anybody's interested, that's the way to do it, because it ends up saving you money versus buying each of them individually. The first one's free. That's the way a lot of us authors, independent authors, get you. Right. We hook you with that first book. We give it to you for free. Get the hooks in, and then it's like a drug dealer, and now you're stuck. You got to go for the next one.
It's a great analogy. Yeah.
Great. Now I'm going to have to go back and edit the YouTube video later to edit out that part where it's just going to skip. You're just going to see a gap in the video.
That's okay.
Yeah, whatever.
So then knock down our door. So then you can get books 1 through 4, and then you have 5, 6, 7, and 8, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And the first 4 they're all progressively longer than the one before. Yep. But I mean, I think that the first 4, to me, are one book, in my opinion. Right. And then the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th are all novel length books.
Yeah, so. They definitely do get longer. And really good. So let's talk about book 1 is centered around a character named David. Yeah. Now, the opening few pages of Deadlocked opens like no other book I've ever read has. It goes from just a a casual setting at work where there's things going on and whatever to everyone glued to a TV screen, and a movie and a TV crew in front of a school bus full of children, and the next thing you know, all holy hell breaks loose, and you have elementary kindergarten kids, right? They're young, they're elementary age. Elementary school kids are literally ripping themselves apart inside of a bus.
Jesus.
And just everybody flips out because it's on national TV.
So you're watching, in the book, you're with the main characters, and that's on, I think it's on a computer screen in their office, and they're sitting there watching this live feed, and oh my gosh, this is going on. So my goal with that was I wanted to do something intense right from the beginning, to where it's still like, holy cow, we're not pulling any punches, But I didn't want to jump in and do it where the violence was very descriptive at that point, because that's a tough subject,
right?
With kids, you don't want to see a kid get hurt. So I tried to stay away from it being that way. It's interesting because later on in my books, like the way 314 starts, I always tell people, read the first 20 pages of 314. And if you can take it, you'll love the book because it's intense. And it does have a kid in it as well. Although there's no violence to the kid in that one either. Now that I think about it, it's just to somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
The kids are doing the violence too. But.
Deadlock. Is that 1 through 4? Does it say it? Click on it. Ryan's going to purchase it right now, I believe.
Hey, there you go.
It should say books 1 through 4.
Yeah, complete first series.
First series. Yeah.
Is that a Kindle 1 through 4, or is it like paperback 1 through 4?
There is a paperback version of it. But
there's a that's 6, that's 7, that's 4.
1.
Should say complete first series.
Broken Pieces 1 through 3.
No, Broken Pieces is good though too, man. You don't understand. I bought everything you put out when it came to that. The Broken Pieces
was interesting because when I first did the first one, it's just a novella, like I was saying, and so are the other ones. They're fairly short, and I had these ideas of fleshing that story out more. And once it became popular, it was like, oh man, I should take all those ideas I had and do something with it. So the Broken Pieces 1 through 3 represent all of the other stories going on in the background that you don't see happening.
Yeah.
That's where that happened.
Then they were fun reads, even though they were they were short, they were fun, and they really like it. They helped put, like you said, they put like these little pieces to the puzzle. Finally, getting everything to give you a whole picture. It was great. I found it. The main character in book 1, David, is having a bad day himself. I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of candy here, because I know as I'm talking about it, it's gonna start itching you, just like it's itching him right now, and that's why he just bought the first 1 through 4.
Maybe I ordered it, maybe I didn't.
His whole thing is now he's got to fight to get home. He's got his wife Laura, his 2 daughters Kim and Annie, and it's a fight to get from where he works in the city to across the bay to where home is.
Right.
And I don't want to give you guys too much, but I'll tell you what, this man is not afraid to kill anybody.
It like Game of Thrones style, not afraid to kill the fan favorite.
He will kill anyone at any point in time, no matter how much you love them. It doesn't matter. He'll drop a person like that. So, there and the character development. So, David, to you, was this someone that you just thought up of? Was it someone kind of who mirrored in real life?
Yeah, I think that I've been a sales guy for a long time. That's what I've done before I started writing and getting stuff published. And so as far as that goes, I can definitely relate to David. Mm-hmm. It's not a big secret in the book. It's not really a spoiler, but one of the motivating factors is that he finds out he might have cancer.
Yep.
And so the zombies serve as an allegory to death chasing him throughout the whole book.
Right.
So what the book is really about is the idea of mortality and a father figuring out, holy shit, I'm going to die one day.
Yeah.
You know, that could happen. So how do I prepare for that? How do I get my family prepared for that? If I go within the next however long, if I have cancer and I'm not going to make it, how do I make sure my family is going to be safe?
Yeah.
You know, now you throw the zombie apocalypse in, and all of a sudden it's not cancer anymore; it's zombies chasing you.
Right.
You know, literally death nipping at your heels.
Right.
You know, so that's what I loved about that first one and David's journey through that is that idea of the zombies aren't just some mindless horror antagonist that's coming at him. It's literally cancer. You know, it's death that's on his heels the whole time. So that's where the first one, that's really the focus of that book.
Yeah, and you know, the I find it comical just because I'm a little bit morbid, but just the cancer the location of it, you know what I mean? It kind of like when I first read that, I was like, oh, come on, you got to be kidding me. Out of all the places that have cancer, which if anyone who's got little smarts in there, you know, you guys will catch on to what I'm saying. All right, so then you have Laura. Now, character development there, a very, very strong woman who becomes a leader of a very large group of survivors, people that they, you know, that she kind of built this, built it on her own with Billy and Hero from the beginning. Mm-hmm. So, as far as her character development, should I guess and say you might have pulled that from your mom?
You know, I wouldn't say so. I honestly, as far as Laura goes, I think she started out as just, quite frankly, just a side character.
Yeah.
You know, she just happened to be the wife that he was getting back to. Mm-hmm. And then once I knew that this is somebody who I want to put through hell, you know, it was really, I mean, in the second book, she gets put through hell.
Yeah.
That's a rough journey that she goes on.
Right.
And to the point where some of the negative feedback I get is like, really, you know, like, really, this is a bit much, right? Like, it's a bit much for her to go through. And yeah, it is. That's kind of the point, is how can you push her to the very edge? How far will she go to protect her kids?
Right.
And there's a scene in that second book that I will always stick with me of, and I don't want to give it away, but where she gets attacked by a zombie and she doesn't have anything to defend herself with.
Yeah.
There's nothing she can do. She has her hands and she has her mouth and she's got to kill this thing. Yep. And so it gets crazy.
Yeah. Well,
with her, it was for her development. Once a person survives what she goes through, I felt like now you're, boy, oh boy, you're a leader at this point. You're somebody who has been through it. There's not a character in the series that goes through more than she does. And she keeps up the strength and protects her family. And family isn't just her two kids by the end of it. The idea being that her family expands and there's other people then that she cares about too.
Yeah, absolutely. You get introduced to Billy also in the first book with David, and then as it carries over to Laura's story and everything like that in the second book and everything, Billy is a young, athletic baseball player, kind of, you know, sort of thing. Description that his father gave him, William, in the book is, you know, he's been smacking home runs with zombies' heads all day long. You know, so that was just the scene development and stuff like that you have. You know, it put me personally. Like I said, it sucked me right into the whole, you know, world of it. Hero, by far one of my favorites. Hero's a very interesting story as far as, you know, his character and his brother Mark. Where did you get that from?
Honestly, the way that ended up coming about, and this happens to me a lot, especially with the Deadlock series, because I knew where I wanted the stories to end to a certain extent, but the journey there was largely left up to whatever I was writing. So with Hero, that started out with just him. The scene where they're walking through the neighborhood and he appears.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I was just adding tension. to the scene. You know, I knew I wanted to add some tension in here. How do I do it? Boom, a little levity as well.
Right.
I felt like would do some really good there.
Yeah.
And so here comes this character, and
Yeah.
boom, it was just right as soon as he got on that page, he was one of my favorite people to write.
Yeah.
You know, just bar none. I loved writing him, and I knew I wanted to add a lot of character to him and backstory. That's where Mark comes from.
Yep.
And so Deadlock 3 was an interesting book for me because I usually, like I said, I like to know where I'm going. That one, quite frankly, the place I knew where I was going, and again, I don't want to give away plot spoilers, but there's a scene where Billy makes it back to his house to try to find his mother.
Yeah.
And that particular scene is where I was headed with that book. That's where I knew I wanted to end up. And the way they got there and what happens afterwards was kind of just, I want to keep going. You know, I want to keep telling the story with these characters. But it was that scene in his mother's bedroom that, obviously for reasons that I expressed, you know, as far as I was dealing with the possibility of my mother dying,
Right.
that scene has, to me, throughout my entire career of writing, has stood up at the very top
Right.
of what I love. You know, I go back to that and I can feel the raw emotion in myself still that I felt the day that I wrote that. It's still tough for me to read that.
And I remember you actually writing that in your author's notes at the end of the book too, saying that scene out of everything has always, you know, been the one to stick with you.
That one in the Deadlock series, there's 3 of them, and for anybody who's read them, you'll know what I'm talking about. Anybody else, you won't. There's that scene. There's the end of book 6 with Kim, and there's the end of book 8 with the way that book ends,
right.
and with the character that ends on.
Right.
That one was huge for me. You know, it was just I knew from writing the 5th book, I knew how that series was going to end, and basically the words that it would end on.
Right.
And it had, so those are the 3 scenes for me that still stick in my heart.
And I mean, yeah, that book ends with Ben and Kim. Right? The series ends with Ben and Kim?
Well, no, I'm talking specifically about Hero.
Oh, Hero. Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's the scene I'm thinking of. Is specifically Hero.
Yeah.
And where that book closes at.
Yeah, yeah. Because out of all, like I said, man, this guy will take the wind right out of your sails. He really does. Everything's just coasting along great. So, all right. So then, like I said, my favorite character out of everybody, besides Hero being, you know, one of my favorites, but my favorite all the time is Regan. He is.
Is he a jerk?
No, well, he's not a jerk. At first, he's a jerk because you don't understand. Even he's in the dark about things that are going on until he finally has a talk with his lifelong buddy, Charles. Covington. Yeah, Charles Covington, right? Was it Charles Covington or was it, no?
It's been so long since I wrote it. It's Covington. I don't remember his first name.
Yeah. He's a military man. You know, the whole Deadlock series, you know, like what I said earlier, is it's a government, to me, it's a government, you know, cleansing of the population. It's a restart. They want to restart civilization and do it, you know, better and smarter and more equipped as far as people being soldiers, super soldiers kind of thing. And that's where you get into like the Dawn system and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's going into the 5th book. It's I basically what it was about was a real problem for the world right now. It's overpopulation. Yeah. It's a huge, huge issue. So the Deadlock series was about the idea that, hey, we've got to solve this problem. And is it going to be easy? Nope. It's going to be horrible, but it has to be done. One of those bad decisions.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole antagonist plan is how do we deal with this overpopulation issue? And they figure out a way. But it's not just, once you get into the 5th through the 8th book, you figure out that it's not just the zombie apocalypse. There's a whole lot of other stuff going on as well. So.
And I mean, if you're one of these people who sits there and like, you know, I don't know, do I believe anything that the government really says? And if I disappear in a couple of weeks or anything like that,
it's because the NSA is watching.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't trust them as far as I could throw anyone in the government. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I've always been a firm believer that they just don't like us and they're not on our side. You know, he just doesn't really matter. They could wipe us out and not give two shits.
Right.
So reading the Deadlock series, we spoke about this in the pre-show. It'll make you look at certain things differently, and it'll stick with you because I still, when I go to gas up my car, I don't grab the pump handle like I used to, you know. And you know, I don't. I really, I mean, besides Ryan, I'm not afraid of Ryan doing anything to me. But like, as far as people being close to me, I've never liked people being in my personal space, number one. But, you know, you talk about jam-packed subway systems and the commuter system and stuff like that. And it's just like, you won't let it, you'll look at people and be like, you know, I think you're just a tad too close. You know? So
are you saying I'm not a threat?
No, you're not a threat.
Damn.
That was one of the things about I think any kind of movie that's dealing with a contagion and zombie stuff a lot of times falls into that. But any virus, Stephen King's The Stand, things of this nature, how quickly everything could fall apart.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we live in this what an idolized world that we live in, where everything's fine, and our biggest concern, like when your electricity goes out, it's horrible. You know,
right,
I'm sure you guys do the same thing. You're walking through a room, it's like, oh, the lights are out, honey, and every time I walk in a new room, it's like I try to flick on the light.
Yeah.
I can't live without this. You know?
Right.
If the internet goes down, I'm pissed all night. You know, it's like I can't. Oh, for crying out loud, I don't have my phone won't work. You know, and stuff like that.
Oh,
so,
you know, it's funny you say that because
in an instant.
Oh yeah,
that's
in
that's
the
something I love about the industry, about that whole the apocalypse genre.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
Just that idea and playing around with that is interesting.
The collapse would be instant.
Yeah.
There's a great scene when I'll let you one second. There's a great scene when Hero and Billy are together, and Billy's kind of like just gazing up. You know, there were Reagan too, and they're gazing. He's looking up at the sky, and he's like, it's weird, man. He's like, there's no planes, and Hero looks up. He's like, yeah, you're right. It's eerie as shit, and they kind of realize like civilization is definitely on the decline. It's fallen. Like everything around you isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing anymore.
No, and that particular scene came right from my memory being after 9/11, and on 9/12, trying to go to work and looking outside and looking at the sky and just it's like, holy, this is weird. I remember watching fighter planes fly over Chicago, and it was just like, this is insane. You know, this feels so weird.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what I was going for with that. I think they even mentioned it, like it's like 9/11 or something.
Right.
So.
Well, that's why. Yeah, I mean, when we spoke too, because as I read the series for my second or third time, because I would always try to go back because you like to hide things and you have to there's broken pieces and stuff like that, but like you like there's in his series.
I did there broken pieces.
Yeah, well, yeah, with his series Broken Pieces, so it's like if you didn't read those, you could try to do some figuring out on your own because you knew things were definitely missing, and he's got these hidden little things all throughout his books.
Yeah.
You buy the Broken Pieces and you're like, ah.
Yeah. That's my favorite book up until now. My favorite book that I've ever written that did a lot of that was 314 Book 2.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you made it to the second one in that, but that one is throughout the whole thing. I designed it to where the reader's getting confused,
right?
And I wanted to take them to the point where they're getting a little ticked off at me.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't making sense. What is this? Why is this?
Yeah.
What did you do this thing for? And it's because once you get to the end and the key unlocks that door and you're like, oh no, now I've got to go back and read the book again.
Right.
I now that I know the secret, it's like watching The Sixth Sense and getting into that movie and you're like, oh my gosh, that's what it was. I have to watch that movie again. And I love that feeling. The biggest part for me with that is if the writer never lied to you. If you can go back and reread it and you feel like, no, yep, they had this all figured out. They never lied to me about anything. throughout this whole thing. And I'll give you an example. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, but if you haven't, you need to check it out. Have you ever heard of Black Mirror, the television show?
No.
I've heard of it. I've never watched it though.
Okay, you guys need to watch Black Mirror. It's
Okay.
incredible. I'm telling you guys, you need to watch Black Mirror. But there's an episode of Black Mirror called San Junipero, and it's I think it's the best episode they've done. And it's like an hour of perfect television. And once you get to the end of it and you realize everything, you figured it all out, and you go back and rewatch that show, you realize never once did they lie to you. From the very beginning, they were telling you exactly what's going on. You just didn't get it. You didn't have all what you needed in order to figure out the puzzle, but they didn't lie to you.
Right.
You just happened to be there watching the characters go through what they were going through. Then you get to the end, and it's like immediately, I've got to watch that again. I have to see that again because they did that. I love that feeling.
How long's the show been going for?
Black Mirror, there's 3 seasons of it. It was originally a show in the UK, but now it's a Netflix original.
All right.
So check
good
it out.
to know. I'm
And
going to definitely check it out.
Every episode is different. You don't have to watch every single episode, and it doesn't. There's not one concurrent story.
Yeah.
Every one is its own individual story.
That's
Check it
awesome.
out, man.
No, I'm definitely going to.
You know, it's funny you say that too, because in the story that I was talking about that I was writing, when I started writing it, I said to myself, I want one huge plot twist at the end, and like for it to kind of leave you saying like, what the fuck, like you didn't see that coming. But at the same time, I've been like inserting little clues in things that the character has said, and things that the character has done, and just the way that they've acted. And so that way, if you go back and read it, you're going to go, son of a bitch. It was there the whole time. And that's kind of what I wanted, So it's like, it's in plain sight, but it's not.
Yeah. It's a powerful literary device. It gets overused, and I'll use movies as an example. Like The Sixth Sense came out. And after The Sixth Sense, there must have been 50 movies that came out that just focused on, we have to have a twist. There has to be a twist in it. And then it became a joke with the director to where, what's the twist, in his next movie, and it just got ridiculous. And so you've got to be careful that you're not doing the whole thing just for the twist, to where that's all that it rides upon, because then I think people get ticked off about it. But if it's a good story and there's a plot twist that leaves somebody saying to themselves like, I need to read this again. You know what else they're going to do? They're going to tell their friends, you need to go read this.
Yeah,
that's what I found.
They make memes about what's his name? He's a director. He does like all those weird movie M
Shyamalan Ding Dong.
M Night. Yeah, they always do that thing. He's like, what a twist.
Exactly.
So all right. So in your books, like I said, after reading them, a couple of times, I noticed that you had mentioned like disasters like after 9/11 and Katrina and stuff like that. Did they play a role in your world? Is you creating this world or anything like that? Like, was a natural disaster?
I think it's unavoidable for anybody writing an apocalypse story. What do you look on? You look on your own experiences. None of us have experienced the apocalypse, so the only thing you can look at is the closest we've come.
Right.
And man, if you want to see an apocalypse, look at New Orleans post Katrina.
Right.
Yeah.
That's an apocalypse right there. Watch how society breaks down. Watch how nobody comes to help and nobody helps each other.
Right.
Some people do. And here's something that I love. There's a quote, I believe it was Mr. Rogers, who said that in an emergency, look to the people running to help.
Yeah.
That's
right.
Which is great.
Sure.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
What the apocalypse looks at is what happens when that's over. What happens when the disaster is big enough where people come to help initially and we all band together? That's great. There's nothing that's wonderful. We all like anytime there's a tornado that goes through the Midwest and ravages an area, it's heartwarming to watch people get together and to help one another.
Yeah.
To help their neighbors. That's great. Now, here's the twist. Here's the horror twist. What happens when it just lasts a little bit longer? And all of a sudden, it's not just let's help our neighbors. It becomes
survive.
Exactly. How quickly will people turn on each other?
Yeah.
That Mr. Rogers stuff goes out the window when I might die. And that's where I think the apocalypse stuff really gets interesting is once you get to that point.
And that's even something you touched on too, is that the zombies are there initially and they're a threat, but people are going to always be the bigger threat.
Yep.
That's kind of why. Oh, sorry.
almost all zombie stories do that. You know, and I'm not going to say any good ones because there's lots of zombie stories out there.
Sure.
There's probably a ton of them that do really interesting things with like Warm Bodies or whatever, where you're just like, I never expected to go this direction. But a lot of zombie literature focuses on the zombies as the antagonist at the beginning.
Yep.
But they're not the antagonists once you get into the meat of the story.
Right.
The antagonists are the human beings.
Yeah.
They're just they're the weapon, or they're just that constant threat that keeps things moving. But it's tough to make them the antagonists because they're mindless killing machines.
Yeah.
Unless you twist it somehow to where you're doing something different with them too.
Hashtag Z Nation.
I would get bored if all you were reading was just somebody running from a zombie the whole time. You know, I want to add in something else. How do we? It's just natural for the story to progress in a way that it's about other humans trying to survive too.
That's why I really like Walking Dead, because Walking Dead started out with this. It was pure survival. You know what I mean? It was just literally not getting killed by a mindless dead person.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we've started shifting into this, holy shit, there's other people out there and they mean to kill us. And
they want us dead. What we have. They want, whatever.
Half of your stuff.
And that's the thing about The Walking Dead and who are people's favorite bad guys. You know, it's always the humans. It's going to be the various leaders of a different group that's going against Rick and the guys and everybody. So that's who everybody wants to watch. You know, that's the interesting stuff.
Yeah, of course. So, okay, so we'll cover the last character I want to mention in the book is Ben. You're introduced to Ben in book 5.
Yep.
And you have one of Laura's daughters, Kim, who's actually in the same facility as Ben. Is that a ghost opening your door?
No, it's a daughter.
So I was like, "What's going on over there?"
It started. He fucking started.
You know, if my dog could, he would open the door right now to my room.
It's like Dawn of the Dead, the remake, where the little girl opens the door and she's standing there, and the husband wakes up and
Ben to me came off as like this modern day Bruce Lee. Later on, as he grows up, where is that? Where did you get this idea for this guy from?
The way that the fifth one started, I really wanted to screw with people's emotions with the fifth book. Because I knew that the first four were super popular, and the characters, everybody wanted to see what happened to them.
Right.
And so I wanted to jump in with the fifth book, because I had this idea. It was actually, I had a whole different idea for a book called Cobra Dawn. And it was going to be the book, and it was about the Dawns, you know, and that whole situation. And I knew I wanted to tie that into it, but I wanted to start the book and trick the reader into thinking, oh, this isn't going to have anything to do with the characters from the other books. In fact, when I was talking about that book, I warned my readers, like, don't expect to see your favorite character. They might show up. But there's no promises. That's not what this is about.
I remember that.
So the first, half of that book doesn't even feature those characters. Yeah. Maybe not quite half, but it's pretty deep into the book before anybody shows up. But when that character does show up, it's awesome. You know, because it's Hero shows back up.
Yeah.
And you as the reader, he doesn't even announce himself. It's just, immediately who it is. Yeah. It's like, oh, he's back. You know? And it's such a great moment in that book. I love it so much. And then when you're like, oh, it's not just him. I'm going to get to see the girls that were kids in those other books all grown up. Yeah. You know, it's just exciting.
Yeah, because there's definitely, you definitely have a time jump there. There's a leap in time that takes place.
And so Ben was kind of, I wanted to show somebody living in this post-apocalyptic world. And that's where his story came from. That whole first section with him, he doesn't even interact with anybody until he meets Harrison, I think.
Right.
You know, it's a while before he interacts with somebody other than a dog. So it gives a chance, like solitary out in the middle of nowhere, just surviving. And I loved that. I loved that section of that book.
Yeah, no, it was definitely, I know what you mean, because I remember... Somebody's here.
Speaking of dogs.
I remember opening that book. I started reading it. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. This is about Ben. What the hell is going on? And where's everybody else? You know.
Yeah.
but you do get to enjoy learning more about Ben, and him basically being trained by his father, and like having the files and the people to hunt down and everything. So that's cool. I've always wanted to know your backstory to each one of these people and like the development of them and everything. So I'm happy I got to get the answers to all that. Sigh of relief.
He's a happy Chris tonight.
I am a happy Chris tonight. All right. So as far as all your characters, who's your favorite one you've ever came up with?
It's funny because you'll hear a lot of authors several times will say, well, I love them all. They're all like my babies and what have you. And I guess that's true. To a certain extent, though, for me, there are definitely characters that I enjoy writing more than other characters. They just, for whatever reason, click with me. And when I'm writing, their whole sections are super easy. And I'm just plowing through it. It's
right.
like it just comes naturally. For me, Hero was definitely one of those characters. He was just every time he was in a scene, I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved writing his character. He really came alive to me. I think Kim also in the fifth and sixth books really spoke to me.
Right.
Her character and the way she progresses, and Annie to a certain extent as well. But Kim's story really meant a lot to me. Especially how the sixth book ends and she has a son and all this stuff that's going on with that was great. I think in the new book that I'm just releasing right now, Shutter In, there's a character named Ash who I connect with really well. And she's a character who has schizophrenia and Tourette's. So it really, for me, it was a challenge to write and be honest about those conditions and not turn it into a joke.
Right.
Throughout the book, it was really this character suffers with these issues. It's not a joke. That's what she deals with. And that was a lot more fascinating than I expected it to be. So I enjoyed her as well. So I think those are the characters off the top of my head that really popped. Reagan was another one that was certainly, very interesting to go through.
Yeah.
For sure. And then in the 314 series, it was actually kind of her brother, who's I can't give away who he is, but his whole sections were great.
Right.
There are some creepy scenes with him in those books that I just, oh boy, do I love them.
Yeah, no, see, 314, I had to read the first book twice. I had to read it, and I was like, let me go through this again. I just, it is one of those books, even though the first one isn't, like you said, like the second one is, as far as what the hell is going on kind of thing. But, just for me to like make sure I just read what I thought I read, I wanted to go back and read it again.
The 314 series will do that to you on purpose. It's kind of the point. And it makes you continually go back and replay scenarios over and over again. In the book, it does that to where you're recycling the same thing that just happened, but now it's a little bit different, a little bit more violent. Something's changed. And why did that change? Those books are a big puzzle to try to figure out. And what I'm doing actually now, and this is a big experiment for me, I'm super excited about it, because the 314 series was always my most successful series that I ever did, by a long shot. And I knew I wanted to come back to that series, but I didn't want to come back to it, sort of similar to how I did with the fifth Deadlock book. I didn't want to come back to it and just be like, here's where everybody is now, and we've just continued it. I wanted to take it in a whole new direction. So the idea I came up with was, I'm going to start, and this is the first time I've done it, I'm creating what I'm calling the verse, which is a universe where all of the books have taken place in this universe. It doesn't mean that the characters are going to show up in the different books. It just means that something that happened in 314 also happened in the same universe as Shutter In. And will they merge at some point? Yes. Yes, they will. There will be characters that come here and there. They will visit different places that were in the other books. The events of these books will affect one another, but they stand alone as well. So, like, you can read the 314 series and never read Shutter In, or you can read Shutter In and never read the 314 series, and it won't hurt you. Kind of like what you were saying about the Broken Pieces books, where if you love Deadlock, that's great. You don't have to read Broken Pieces, but if you love it so much that you want to read more, it's there, and you'll understand the Deadlock series more if you read Broken Pieces. this is sort of the same thing where I want to reward readers who stick with me and who want to get involved in a universe. That's what Shutter In is kind of delving into that idea, which I love the idea of that. It's tough to do with the zombie apocalypse stuff.
Yeah.
If you add zombie apocalypse in the mix, it's kind of going to change everything. So
Yeah, that's true. We have we have a question. Have you ever put family members in your books?
I'll tell you this: never anybody in particular, but absolutely pastiches of people. To where you get there are certain people in the books where, of course, they're modeled after a friend or a family member, something like that. It's not an exact 100% replica, but it is certainly there.
Right.
And then it goes more than just characters, but also ideas. I'll give you a big for instance there. The 314 books came about because of an old joke that some friends of mine and I had. Because my buddy, who I actually just saw, he's from Indiana, I just saw him again the other day. He and I worked at McDonald's together, and there was a value meal that cost $2.99. And when you added tax to it, it was $3.14. So all day long, you're telling people that'll be $3.14, that'll be $3.14,
That's
funny. $3.14. So it became this joke between us where it's like, God, I'm so sick of that number. And it also happened to be pi. So you're just going to see this number constantly, and it started to like haunt us.
Right.
And we had this joke going around where like, you just can't get away from it. 314 is everywhere. That's where 314 initially came from. The idea behind it was that'll be 314, $2.99 value meal at McDonald's.
That's
back in
crazy.
96, 97, something like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so now we know the origins of 314 came from
McDonald's.
McDonald's $2.99 meal.
How about that?
What do we got? You actually, you know what? Yeah, you've mentioned that you've bounced. So you've bounced around in a few places, and now you reside in Colorado. For now, or
mm-hmm. I lived in Texas. I lived in Indiana for a long time. I lived in Florida for a couple of years, and now I'm out here in Colorado. And man, I love Colorado. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and you're how long have you been in Colorado for?
Just about 10 years now.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a little over 10 years.
All right. Yeah, I feel like the area that you're from that's not far from Boulder, is it?
No, yeah, I'm right next to Boulder.
Yeah, I was gonna say because I've driven to.
You've driven past his house.
I've driven to the city or whatever, the town, county, whatever. I don't know. I've driven by this.
Next time you're out here, let me know.
Called Longmont,
there you go.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, I've definitely been through that area before.
There you go, bro. We'll do a road trip out there.
Can we make it
Come on out.
Can we make it to a Comic-Con first?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Walker
I do know that the Spanish food's amazing out there. I do know that much. Yeah. So all right. So let's talk real quick about Shutter In. It's a new book that you just finished. It's going to be releasing this week sometime. You're hoping, right? For ebook.
Yeah, hopefully on Friday it'll be available.
Okay.
And you said a hardcover will be, or like a paperback will be like next month kind of thing, possibly.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
We also it'll also be on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
It'll be on Amazon for $3.99 for ebook.
Yep.
So that'll be Shutter In, his new series he just finished. Donna said, crap, LOL. We have a bunch of people saying, we have some people. We have Jeannie from Texas. Someone lived in our.
Your sister.
Oh, my sister. Sorry, I wasn't really looking at the name.
Sid, I got you.
I wasn't looking at the name. I wasn't looking at the name. My sister lived in Arvada.
Yeah, that's out here. It's a little ways. It's not too far away from where I'm at.
Yeah.
About 45 minutes to an hour.
So yeah, all right. That's cool.
So, and to let you guys know a little bit about Shutter In, because there's something that happened to me recently with that book that was absolutely life-changing for me as far as an author goes. The reason that book exists is because my mom passed away on July 5th of last year. So we just crossed the 1 year mark on that. So when she died, I remember having a conversation with my sister about how I can't wait to have a dream with her in it. I just want to see her again, talk to her again. I can't wait to have that dream. And we waited and we waited and we waited. And when I finally had a dream of her, it wasn't a great dream. It wasn't anything spectacular. And I remember waking up feeling so disappointed.
Right.
And so I thought about, what if I was able to have a perfect dream with her? What would it be? What would I do? If I could just do anything and bring her back for one day, what would I do in that day? And that was the inspiration for Shut Her In. So the idea behind it is, you've got somebody who, when she sleeps next to someone and holds their hand, she can guide them through a dream. And so she can bring back loved ones. And for instance, if you wanted to go fishing with your dad and your dad had passed away, she's going to make that happen for you. So you go fishing with your dad, and people pay her to do this. Now, of course, it's a horror novel, so it had to get horrific, and boy, does it ever. There's a lot of horror in that novel as well. But that was the idea for it. And when I was writing the book, I knew I was touching on something. Something about this was clicking with me in a way that a book hasn't in a long time. It just was flowing really well. And so I threw out to my fan base on my Facebook page, what would your perfect day be? If you could have any dream you wanted, what would it be? And I never in a million years expected the response I got. I didn't just get people sharing tidbits. I got people pouring their souls out to me about what they went through and who they lost that they would want to get back to and see again. And when that started, I felt like this was important, and it was a good way to share something with people and what have you. And then I had a couple people talk about their kids who committed suicide and how they wanted to meet their children and ask them, why'd you do it? And that hit me. I mean, it was like a freight train. It was just, this is too big. I'm not worthy of this. I can't just take that sort of information and not do something with it. And so I started asking people who were sending me this stuff, would you mind if I wrote a scenario for you where, let's say you actually visited Shut Her In. You got to lay down with this person. Tell me about your loved one, and I'll write you a short story that's you with this loved one in a dream. And it was the best I could think to do to create sort of what the character in the book was creating. As these own little personal short stories that I would send out to them. And I did the ones for people whose kids committed suicide, the people whose children died of cancer, stuff like that. It was the most impactful thing I've ever experienced as an author. And that's why this book to me is so important. And not all of those stories, but the majority of the stories that I wrote for people are actually included at the end of the book as like an appendix. Right. So I got their permission to include it. So they're all in there as well. And it's a way for me to have been able to connect with some of my fans that, man, I never in a million years would have thought I would have connected with people like that on. And it was a serious, serious connection. And I mean, for crying out loud, somebody tells you about their daughter who died. I mean, think, how many of your friends have you had those kind of conversations with? Honestly, it's pretty rare that we share that sort of stuff. And here are these people who are sharing it with a stranger, just some author who writes scary stories, and they were sharing that with me. So right. I felt honored, and that's why this book to me is super, super important.
Well, I think if anybody was doubting going out and getting it when it comes out this week, I think the doubt has been completely erased.
Oh, absolutely.
Because now I want,
I can't wait till it comes to the paperback because I'm going to get it.
That sounds absolutely amazing. So
it was a huge experience. It was an absolutely life-changing experience. I've had a couple others where there was one time, my mother had cancer, and she was going to a cancer support group, and she mentioned that her son was a writer, and one of the guys there asked, "Oh, what does he write?" "Oh, his name's A.R. Wise. He writes zombie stories." I love him. This dude in her group was like, "I can't believe it. I love him." And so she called me immediately to tell me, somebody in my cancer group knows you and he loves your books. And it was a huge moment of pride for her. That man, I got a chance to meet him, and he eventually did pass away. And that thing you have, the signed book cover, he had one of them, and he put it next to his coffin.
Wow.
It was such a big deal to him to have met me that he had it next to his coffin at his funeral. That was one of the moments that he treasured. I how do you even deal with something like that?
Right.
You know, it's like, this is the biggest, I don't deserve that.
Yeah.
You know, this is insane. And that's the sort of thing to where it means so much to me to communicate with people,
Right.
with fans, and to talk to them and to interact with them back and forth, to have that sort of connection. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm constantly humbled by that sort of stuff.
What so I want to go back to something. You said that your mother passed last year.
Yeah.
On July 5th.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's kind of a July 5th is my birthday.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's you know, I'll make sure that every year you know, I'll say a prayer for your mom on my birthday. That's, you know.
Oh, thanks. That's nice of you.
Yeah.
It was the best thing I can compare it to. I thought a lot about this as far as what it feels like to lose somebody like that. I don't know if either of you have lost a parent or somebody who's super, super close to you in that fashion. She, for me, was obviously, I mean, for crying out loud, there's so many books I have where I talk about her in the books,
Right.
or in the author's note. She was a big part of my life, and to have lost her was a big, big deal. And the way it feels, what I've come up with is you never get over it. You'll hear from people like, you never get over the loss of somebody like that in your life. You'll wake up every day, you'll think about it at some point during the day, but you will eventually be able to move on.
Right.
And the best comparison I can come up with is it's like losing a limb, where somebody who's lost their left hand doesn't wake up one day and think like, man, I thought I had a hand.
Right.
You know, it's like, no, that hand's gone.
Right.
It's gone forever. It's never coming back. You just figure out how to live your life without it. And that's sort of how that feels. You know, it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's the way it is now. All right, I don't have that anymore.
Right.
You know, so it was a big impactful thing for me. And I think to a large extent, for me, it was like she was the inspiration for me ever writing anything. So I never thought about, will I never write again? I don't want to be that dramatic, but it was definitely like, I don't know. She's I guess like a muse to a certain extent. And now that's gone. And so it was a question of, where do I go from here with that? And where I went, not to try to sell my new books too much, but where I went was to write the best book I've ever written.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. Shutter Inn's the best book I've ever written, in my opinion. I'm incredibly happy with it.
That is awesome. Well, we're gonna leave it on that note then.
Okay.
Right there and then.
And I really think that, you know, I think I can speak for Chris and I when we say that, you know, once it's out and, you know, maybe like a month later or whatever, we can get you back on here and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, and once we give people a chance to actually read it, we can kind of touch base about that, because I mean, it sounds like it's a deeply personal story, and I love stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm happy with how this one turned out. It's of course I'm going through all the editing stuff now and getting everything fixed, and I feel like this one's something special. You know, like the book that I can think of that I felt this good about at the end was that 314 book 2. And when I got done with that one, I couldn't wait for people to get it in their hands, because I wanted to hear how confused and freaked out people were as they were reading it. And then that, like, oh my gosh, that's what it's about. You know, is a big deal. So this one should do it to people.
Awesome. Looking forward to it then. We will keep our eyes peeled for the release. And we will also, you know, we'll make sure we let everybody know too. As soon as it does release, we'll pump it out there for you. And,
that's fantastic. And thank you guys for doing this sort of stuff. This is the kind of stuff that makes a difference. This is the sort of thing that you guys do is why independent authors have a shot, is because of what the passion that people like you have, and the way that you pass it on and bring other people on. It's incredible. I'm hugely impressed by what you guys are doing. Keep it up.
Seriously, that's an honor for you to say something like that. Honestly, that's why we do this stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We do this because we're passionate about it.
Yeah. We do this because we know that our followers appreciate us bringing them someone that they've, you know, read their stuff or seen them on, you know, their favorite TV show or whatever it might be. You know, so it's just fun for us. We love doing it, and you know, it's just a way of giving back. You know, and so, you know, once again, you know, I mean, I appreciate you taking time for us.
Seriously, thank you, man. You know, you gave
absolutely.
us over an hour. You know what I mean, at this point.
Yeah, appreciate it. We will.
Nobody's ever accused me of not being a blabbermouth. So,
hey, that makes it. makes it so much easier on the show too. I mean, time flies. Like you look at the clock, like, holy shit, we've been doing this for an hour. But yeah, just what we'll do is we'll say goodbye to everybody. Just hang out with us for an extra couple minutes once we sign off, and we'll wrap up everything. Thank you everybody for tuning in and watching. Please go check out AR stuff. You will not be disappointed. I'm not just saying that because I fan it hard. It's good stuff.
I'm excited for my book to come in.
Yeah,
Seriously.
So good night everybody out there in Beast Mode Land.
Last thing, make sure you guys go on Snapchat at us, Beast Mode NY, full word.
Yep.
Brand spanking new. We'll be snapping some behind the scenes stuff.
Yes.
As we set up every week, and
we're also going to do a Beast Mode Instagram also.
Yep.
So check that out. There's Mr. Aaron Wise right there saying thanks for joining everybody. Good night all. Thank you for tuning in out there in the UK. We know it's late over there right now. You guys are dedicated. We appreciate it. Thank you to everybody else. Stay safe and check your corners. Peace out.
Nice.
Later.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that.